and welcome to the CSU system-wide CSUBUY Procure-to-Pay, or what we call P2P, demo series. We're excited to have you join us today as we continue preparing for the P2P rollout across all CSU campuses. These sessions are designed to give you an early look, a peek behind the curtain at what the new CSUBUY P2P tool looks like and how it will enhance our procurement and payment processes. Please note that today's session is not training. These demos are intended for general exposure only. Formal training will come later on, closer to the go-live date. Each demo will follow the same webinar format, and all sessions are being recorded for those who cannot attend live. The recordings will be posted on your campus's CSUBUY P2P website. For consistency and focus, the chat and Q&A functions will remain closed during the session. At the end of the demo, we'll provide you with your campus lead's name and contact information so you'll know who to reach out to with questions or follow-up needs. Again, thank you for being here, and let's get started. Here's what we'll cover in today's session. We'll start with a brief introduction to CSUBUY. Then we'll review the overall project timeline and current status. We'll provide some context for supplier management in the P2P system, and then move into the demo itself. To help assist the CO core team with the P2P implementation, the non-live campuses were divided into geographical groups, and each group was assigned a strategic advisor. The strategic advisors are Carrie Schmidt, Nicole Lack, myself, Sarah Rumiano, and Tawny Fleming. Each strategic advisor brings a wealth of procure and payment knowledge to help the campuses along the implementation road.
All right, before we dive into functionality, let's take a moment to review the vision and goals of CSUBUY P2P. Understanding the why helps us better understand the design and decisions that have shaped this project. The vision for P2P is to standardize procurement processes across the CSU, reduce manual steps, and drive efficiencies through automation. Ultimately, this means saving time, reducing risk, and lowering cost. The objectives of the P2P system include developing a single platform that integrates fragmented processes, highlighting preferred and sustainable suppliers, and automating tasks to reduce manual effort and improve compliance.
The P2P platform offers a range of valuable benefits. For suppliers, it ensures timely payments and provides convenient self-service tools. For internal users, it streamlines the purchasing experience and eliminates the need for ProCard reconciliations for transactions within the P2P system. At a system-wide level, the platform enhances data quality, boosts visibility, and supports our ongoing commitment to operational efficiency and strategic improvement. This slide shows our high-level timeline. We're currently in the implementation phase with readiness and deployment activities scheduled through early 2026. So now we're going to shift into the supplier management portion of today's session. This will lay the foundation for understanding what you'll see in the demo.
Hi, everyone. Melissa here. One of the first things we want to make sure that everyone's aware of, in case it was missed, is that this CSUBUY structure includes a centralized supplier management list. So every supplier that's related to CSUBUY will be managed specifically by the central team at the Chancellor's office. Now, of course, there'll be some coordination with the campus, but ultimately, this structure was created to kind of get some consistency around who's responsible for the data, making sure we have a consolidated and concise setup and approval process. We have a process for you all to escalate questions and for suppliers to reach out if they need support as well. And then who provides the support, we'll kind of talk through a little bit as we get through the slides. And then in terms of urgent profiles, sometimes there are things that pop up from time to time. We do have a process for accommodating those urgent supplier records. And then in terms of technical support, talking through, the components related to who can help support at what level, different tiers, if you will, regarding the level of support that suppliers or campus users might use. So if you look at the image here, you'll see that, those pieces are the basic supporting management activities. In the middle in the blue there is all of the components that you all know or might be familiar with when it comes to supporting suppliers, getting them through our processes in order to, facilitate the ordering process and all the way through the payment cycle and payment activity. So there's lots of components when it comes to suppliers. And so, we're hoping that with this new structure, it kind of provides an opportunity to streamline that process, and then also, allows you all at the campus to provide support and function in CSUBUY in a different way without managing the actual supplier record. So that is unique in this environment. Keep that in mind. Next, please. So let's talk about the different roles. When it comes to the campus, like I mentioned, still has a component in the cycle of the supplier relationship. So the campus team will review any supplier requests that come from the campus community. So the campus community can initiate a new supplier request in the system. It will go to the campus team to evaluate whether it's appropriate or not. Once that evaluation happens, they'll pass it off to the system-wide supplier management team to review, add the new supplier, invite a supplier to the network, and then support them through that process, which involves, adding and updating their record in the master list. The campus team will also participate in supporting the campus users and also any basic supplier questions that might come through the pipeline, depending on the situation, and if needed, would escalate any of those questions to the system-wide supplier management team to help support the users. And then they're also going to help as part of the review process to ensure that the supplier request is appropriately earmarking which campus business unit is going to use that supplier. That piece is important to make sure that we are getting the supplier connected to the right business unit and only that business unit. And we'll talk through one of the forms that can be utilized later when it comes to extensions. So if by chance one of the business units does not get set up originally, there's a really pretty straightforward way for requesting that that supplier gets extended to that other business unit should they need them in the future. Next, please. So this is going to be that system-wide supplier management team, that central team that lives at the chancellor's office. They are actively involved in initiating the invitation to the supplier. So remember, in the CSUBUY system, suppliers are invited to be a part of our network. So there's a little bit of vetting on the front end to ensure that we have activity with that supplier. They do then get invited. Suppliers are responsible for their own registration. They're completing their own information in their profile, maintaining and updating over time. And then the supplier management team, the central team, reviews those records with new additions or any updates that come at a later date. The supplier management team will help resolve any escalations, help provide support to both the campus users or the campus supplier master team, help with developing training or providing training to the campuses as we go. And then just making sure the supplier master data kind of meets those things that we talked about in one of those first slides. Data integrity, completeness, has, cohesive information that we're looking for across all of our suppliers. We're regularly looking at that list for, any outdated profiles, maybe some inactivity with a supplier, things that kind of pop up that you would normally do in your campus life in terms of maintaining your supplier database. The system-wide team will do that in this realm as well on your behalf. And then, of course, this team also partners with the campus system-wide administrator. So it's a lot of, two-way communication pathway between these two user groups to make sure that our suppliers are added to the network, and any updates are, kind of pushed through the system, or make sure that the supplier master list is as updated as possible at all times. And let's just talk through a basic workflow of how suppliers kind of come into the ecosystem. So as I mentioned before, your campus community, any user in CSUBUY can submit a supplier request. So maybe the expectation is that they've looked and searched for the supplier, which I'll show you how to do. If they don't find a supplier, they will submit the supplier request, and then it will go to that campus group that we just talked about to kind of review that request and then pass it along if it's valid. Sometimes that might be an opportunity for your team, your campus team, to say, oh, we have 15 of these suppliers that provide the same service, or maybe the end user has asked for a supplier that's, out of the country, and there's other opportunities. The campus supplier team can kind of help with that conversation and decide whether that new supplier should be invited. But once that determination is made, they'll approve it, and then it will come to that system-wide team to review that request and then actually send out the invitation to the supplier. Sending that invitation is a really important step. The recipient of that invitation needs to be someone that can answer basic demographic information about the supplier, may have access to their tax information, W-9 files, banking information if they want to elect for electronic banking payments. And then, of course, addresses that are important, maybe their physical address, or they have unique remit addresses. That's the kind of contact we're looking for those invites. That invite, if it happens to make it to the wrong contact, cannot be forwarded to another to complete the registration. So that initial invite is really an important part of this process. And then once the supplier completes their registration, it will get passed back to the supplier, the system-wide supplier team, to review, look and make sure everything matches up. There's some system validation checks that are mentioned here that we can talk through real quick. So, TIN check goes out to the IRS, make sure the TIN matches the name according to IRS records. There's an OFAC check for if the supplier is on a sanctioned list and maybe we need to evaluate doing business. And then, of course, the California Secretary of State. And then there's a banking verification for the electronic banking information that they've provided, if that's applicable. So there is a verification process involved in that review. And then, of course, if everything's complete, looks good, the system-wide supplier team will approve that supplier and pass it on to the next step, which is syncing to CFS, which makes that supplier available in CFS and therefore available for you all to start shopping, starting requisitions to that supplier and kind of kicking off orders. Let's do next. So this next slide is just for your recall later. There's a couple things that we want to make sure that you are aware of, and these are just strictly supplier resources, so they're available for you to reference. If suppliers have questions, you can pass them along to these particular resources. The biggest one, which I do want to show you live, and I'll do that in a few minutes, is the supplier resource page, which is chock full of information that is very helpful to the suppliers in terms of the registration process, or other tips and tricks that might be meaningful for them as they work through the registration cycle. And then if by chance they need additional support, we do have a system-wide email that they can connect with and ask their questions. Of course, if the question becomes technical to the point where the system-wide team cannot support them, we will have to refer people to Jagger if it's truly a platform issue. And that it can be part of the communication that this team can help walk suppliers through. So that email is available for suppliers for support if needed, if they need some additional assistance with the registration process, or the campus cannot help them with their particular question. They do see this email in various communications that they receive when they're invited, and throughout the cycle, the registration process. So it's something that's available to them. You don't necessarily have to be the one providing it to them. They'll see it in many places, but that's the intent of that email. So we wanted to at least highlight it for you all. Go ahead. Okay, so now we're going to jump out to the system, and I just want to throw this out there, just a quick disclaimer. We're going to be in our non-production site, so our test site. So you'll see supplier names that don't make sense or things that might catch your attention. Just know that the configuration that we're looking at today might look different. It will look different from what you're seeing in production. So just keep that in mind. This is test data, and it's it may have some things that you won't see later. Okay, so I'm going to pop out to my screen, and I want to show you first that supplier references page that I mentioned. So like I said, this has been linked now for you all, so you can take a look at it at your leisure and see kind of what's out there. But there's a lot of information out here for suppliers about the CSU as a whole. One of the things that we've heard from suppliers is they didn't realize that your campus maybe was part of the CSU ecosystem. So just orienting them to that basic thing, and which campuses are out there. Different guides to registration depending on the type of supplier they are. So there's a lot of information out here for to help them through the process if they need it. So I would bookmark this website. It is very handy. We keep updating it over time as things come up, and finding it very useful for everyone. So let's go next to searching for a supplier. So I mentioned to you that one of the steps that we would expect the end users or any user who's going to request a supplier is to search for the supplier first in the ecosystem. So in our test site here, there's a couple different ways to search for suppliers. You'll find that you can get to places in various ways, depends on what ends up being easiest for you. But in the supplier flyout here, you can search for a supplier, or you can also use this general search. It defaults to all, so you'll see other information get pulled back, but you can actually just type the supplier's name here. So I'm going to look for my supplier that we're going to look at today. And there it is. So I'm going to click there. And then the other way that you can search for suppliers, if we go back to the home, which is your shopping page, and we click, let's say we were going to start a goods and services requisition. This first screen is locating my supplier. Oops. So I can search here. Again, you don't have to spell it all out, but when I see the supplier pop up for me, it means it's available for my campus. I can start an order. So we'll talk through if you don't see the supplier, what that looks like. So let's say you came over here to the supplier search. Here, I'll just do a wide open search. You can see all of these suppliers. If by chance I knew I wanted to start a requisition for A-Town, and then I came into my requisition and I searched for A-Town and I didn't see it, the supplier is available in the network, but it hasn't been extended to your particular campus for use. So we'll talk through what that process looks like. But there's two different ways to locate your supplier. You can do the main search, and then once you know that it's available for your campus, you can also start by searching on the form as well. So you can start a requisition with the supplier and start your ordering process. If we go back to the main search, you'll see different registration statuses. So just to kind of highlight that real quick, let me get a screen with a couple different things. So one thing that I don't see here, but one of the registration statuses is invited. That means a supplier has been invited to register in our network. Once they start that process, you'll see the registration status change to in progress. That means they are working through their registration. There's no time stamp on when they're going to be done, right? This is them working through it, completing it. So it really is up to this. It's in the supplier's court. It's up to them to complete the process. Once they've completed their all their parts and they've submitted it back, it will represent as profile complete. And then this is the supplier, the system-wide supplier team doing the review, doing those validations we talked about. Once that part is complete, it will move to status of approved. So if we go look at my demo supplier again, you will see that the registration status is approved. So that means it's gone through all the steps in the process. And one of the things that we wanted to show you today was a Supplier 360. This is something that you all will be able to see as end users, and you'll be able to kind of get a sense of the supplier and where they're at in the process, or maybe things that are important for you to kind of get a sense of who they are. So again, the registration status, you can see that they're active for shopping. That means you'll find them on a form. They've made it through all the pieces, or all the steps in the process. And the other thing that you'll see is their legal name. And if they had a unique DBA name, it would show here, which is sometimes helpful for those of you on the accounts payable side of the house. If that's anyone on the call today, you'll know that, oftentimes suppliers invoice with their DBA name. So you'll be able to see those pieces here. This supplier number is their number in CSUBUY, but also the supplier number that gets assigned in CFS. So that's how you can look them up on that side as well. And then in terms of active business units, when I click on this hyperlink, you'll see which campuses this supplier is available for. So remember, if we think back to looking up the form, it popped up for me for the supplier because it's available for the campus that I'm assigned to, the campus business unit. So you'll see that this supplier is available for 3 different campuses, 4 different business units. So that is a very helpful kind of reference point to kind of get a sense of who can utilize that supplier. So in the case of, let's say you don't see your business unit here and you're like, hey, I want to use this supplier. One of the things that you would do is go back to the home page and you'll find a form that says supplier extension or reinvite. Extension means I want you all to extend the supplier to my business unit. So if you remember, I mentioned earlier, let's say initially the supplier gets set up for one of your business units because that's all you're using it for. And then later some kind of other engagement pops up for another one of your business units. This would be the extension process that you would utilize to then attach that supplier to that secondary business unit that now needs that supplier. So this is very basic information. I'll just show you some of the questions that get asked. So I'm going to extend. I'm going to pick my campus. Obviously, your campuses are not referenced quite yet, but they will be. And you would select your campus. You kind of give us a sense of the urgency of what's happening with the supplier, their legal name, and the supplier number that's in the system, which I showed you in the Supplier 360, and to kind of get a sense of the type of activity the supplier will perform for the campus. So just basic information on those extensions so we make sure that we get the supplier set up correctly for you all on the front end. And if your supplier just doesn't exist, you searched, it's not even in the system at all, and you have a need to request a new supplier to be considered, you would go back to your home page, and here on this hyperlink, you'll see request a new supplier. It's going to ask for some basic information. Let's go to your questions. Similar to what you kind of saw before, depending on which campus you pick, it will ask you which business unit you want to set the supplier up for. Again, it's really important you pick the one that needs it in order for this to go through the process efficiently. And then answering the questions that you just kind of saw before in terms of whose contact information. This is the email address that I described in one of the earlier slides that's so critical. This is the email that gets invited to complete the registration. So knowing who this is and making sure it's an appropriate contact is really important. But sometimes you have what you have, and that's the best that we can get from suppliers, and that's where we start, right? So then you would submit this, and it would go through that workflow that I described to you, where it goes to the campus supplier team to review. And then if they approve it, it comes to the system-wide team to do the invite, and kind of carries on through that process in terms of the supplier completing their registration. And then it gets reviewed for them to be available and active for shopping in the CSUBUY network. So that's the main high level how to, search for a supplier, kind of look at where they're at in the process according to their status, and then how you might request a supplier if you need a new one, or to extend or re-invite a supplier if by chance they lost their registration email and they need it to be sent again. So there's a couple forms out here for you guys to use to get some activity completed for suppliers depending on the situation. So there's the supplier extension or revite, and then this would be a maintenance request. Like maybe you've noticed that the supplier has a new remit address and you want to bring that to the supplier team's attention. And those are forms that you can kind of submit to get some eyes on some changes that might be needed for the supplier profile. I will say that because the suppliers are in charge of their own profile, the expectation is that they're making these updates. There are times where, especially with things like remit addresses, we might step in to help facilitate that. So your payments are going to the right address, but we're always, our interest is for the supplier to make those updates themselves and for them to truly maintain their profile. That's the bulk of what I had to cover, you all. So I can stop sharing.
I will share in just 1 second.
All right. Well, thank you all. That is the conclusion of our demo today. I want to thank you for your attendance. If you have any questions about the P2P project, please direct your inquiries to your campus contact, and they are listed here on the final sheet of this PowerPoint. So we really appreciate you coming. And like we said earlier, this video will be posted on your P2P website, so you can go back and refer to it if you're wanting to look at it later on. So thanks again. We appreciate you, and we'll see you at the next demo.